I never saw it coming. There's a plot twist. Um, well, this is LTUE, Friday, 4 p.m. We've got Donna Milakovic, Allison Hymas, Frank Morin, Kenny Baldwin, and Stanley Wheeler. Don't forget to vote for your favorite art, and we will turn the time over to the panelists and take it away.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm Donna Milakovic. I'm going to be moderating today, and I'm a senior director at Utah Valley University in community outreach. I am also a certified strengths coach and a writer. I've been writing for several years and really just love LTUE. Super excited to be here. And I'm going to introduce the topic for our panel is I never saw it coming, plot twist. So we're going to talk a lot about plot twists, what it is, when it's expected, which is strange because it's a twist. Our panelists are all going to introduce themselves. I'd like you all to introduce yourselves, say what you write. I'm writing in YA fantasy and sci-fi and Regency romance. So those are my two areas. And then you're going to introduce your favorite plot twist from a story, and you're welcome to share a plot twist from your own life as your favorite plot twist. So feel free. I don't want to take any of the good ones from stories. So
I'm sure we'll cover them all in the next hour.
You might cover them all in the next hour. So I think a plot twist from my life, a funny plot twist from my life was starting out in college and then finding myself on an airplane to Las Vegas. And I mean, it wasn't unplanned, but it was a twist in my life. I decided to move to Las Vegas with $1 in my pocket when I was 19, and I had family there, and it was a fantastic new twist. So, with many adventures. All right, let's start. Ladies first. Let's start with Allison, and we'll go around.
I know I do the first one. All right, so I write middle grade mysteries and puzzle books. So I think that's why I'm on this panel, familiar with the twist endings. And plot twist, I think the biggest plot twist from my life is about 3 years ago. I was talking with one of my friends about how I couldn't see me and our mutual friend Spencer ever getting married. And then guess what, 1 year later, and now we have a little girl, and that's a very happy plot twist ending for us.
Congrats.
Good for you.
That's great. Congrats.
Next, we'll go to Frank.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Frank Morin. I write historical fantasy thrillers, and I write epic young adult fantasy. So I am also in the fantasy genre. I got a bunch of books out, and really happy to be here and excited to talk about plot twists. One funny twist for me, growing up, I grew up on what was pretty much a small farm in Maine. We had tons of animals and everything, and always expected to have lots of animals in my life. And it turns out as an adult that I am allergic to a lot of things, including cats and dogs and cows, and some other random things. I learned this year I was allergic to deer, which is kind of weird and random. So, yeah.
How do you even find that out? How do you find out you're allergic to deer?
That's kind of a long story.
Oh, okay. For another day.
We can get into that one later. Maybe I'll post it on the chat or something. But yeah, really interesting stuff. And you can't make this stuff up.
That's great.
Thank you. Okay, in order of appearance, Stanley, you're next.
In order of appearance. Hey, speaking of in order of appearance, I actually attended the very first LTUE back in 87 or 88, right after I graduated from BYU.
That's great.
I write in I write in several genres. I have a couple Western books, mystery, detective noir mystery, and Flintlock fantasy series. The biggest plot twist in my life was when I was happily working at my own law practice and had been doing so for 10 years or so. And a gentleman persuaded me to go to Nevada and work at a title company. I managed to get there right at the peak of the real estate market. And of course, that bubble burst shortly after that. And I'm kind of glad it did, because now I'm back in Idaho and I'm working at a prosecutor's office and thoroughly enjoying what I do.
Awesome. Thank you.
I guess I'm
Kenny.
last. Well, okay. I'm Kenny. Kenny Baldwin. I write historical fantasy. I'm just finishing up my third book, my first trilogy, called the Gas Lamp Trinkets series, and so that's really fun. If you're a gas lamp fan and like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell and all those kind of books, I love them. So let's see, a plot twist for me. I'll just give you a recent plot twist. So my wife and I are expecting our second kid anytime, but no later than next Friday. So if I run off this call, you will know why. But the plot twist is, in 2 weeks, it turns out we will also be having a nice litter of puppies coming. So that was a surprise. But we're all, we're happy at the same time. So it's going to be crazy here for a while.
Well done. You're all very good at this game. Well done. Plot twist from my life. Excellent. Well, let's start with kind of a soft question about plot twists. When is it an expected device in a genre? Like when do we expect there to be plot twists, either in a genre or a certain length of fiction, or when do you expect it in fiction to see a plot twist?
Mysteries.
Yeah, I was going to say
Right?
mysteries too, for sure. If you have a mystery with no plot twists, that's not a mystery. Sorry.
Yeah.
Or it's a really, really short mystery, like 1 page, maybe.
Yeah.
And what are some of the kinds of plot twists that we see pretty regularly, if we're kind of wondering what constitutes a plot twist?
Okay. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about a few examples, just so people can lock in on that.
Stanley,
I think
types of plot twist.
Types of plot twists. Unexpected are the best kind, except they should be except there should be some clues to so that you should have expected them, but you didn't.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to go first on that. I was going to wait for somebody else's answer, and I could tag on to it.
Sure.
So
Well,
go ahead, Frank.
I can throw out, one type of twist that we see are red herrings, for example, talking about mysteries earlier. Those are the kind of the false clues and false leads. We're like, yes, I know who did it. Oh, wasn't them because they just died, or, whatever. That's a classic one, the red herring. I can keep going if you want, or let someone else jump in. I don't want to.
I love the like the character archetype shift type of plot twists, where you think this person's a mentor, but all of a sudden they are an antagonist, or like. I really love seeing creative versions of that, because usually, like, I get tired of either the romantic interest or like the best friend becoming the villain. I think it's really fun to see, like, whoa, the best friend has become a romantic interest all of a sudden, and they're like more subtle plot twists, but I love those.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's like I don't know what else to call it, but there's the sudden revelation plot twist where we're moving along and suddenly we get this new piece of information that just absolutely skews everything we've seen so far. Like I'm thinking, as an example, I'm just thinking of Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh.
Which example from Wreck-It Ralph? There are two.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I'm thinking of the Penelope on the side of the video game. That
was a great one. That flash of information, and all of a sudden you realize your whole worldview has to twist, and that's great.
Yeah, for stories that happens right in book 3 of Harry Potter, just resets the entire trilogy when you find out that his best friend Scabbers is actually a transmorphed human wizard person. And you're like, wait, that rat is a human? That rat's been there the whole time.
That still makes me uncomfortable.
Right? And then he really is a rat, like as a person.
Yeah, Harry Potter's a great thing to work off of because everybody knows that story. Even in Sirius Black, who's this terrible, evil, menacing character, turns out to be not so bad after all. I don't want to give him any spoilers in case you haven't read Harry Potter in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
and
think we're going to give a lot of spoilers on this panel, so just be ready.
do you want to give us?
It's hard to not do spoilers on a plot twist.
Yeah.
It is. The character. Sorry, go ahead.
Did we put out a spoiler warning from this point on?
Yes, spoiler warning. We're going to ruin all of your favorite movies if you haven't seen them.
Yeah, we definitely will.
So here's one, which is Knives Out, because it's an easy one to talk about. I wanted to give some of those character like switches that happen where you think. So you have. I keep wanting to call him Hugh. What is his middle name? The son.
Ransom.
Yeah.
Maybe not that son. Anyway, you have like this entitled jerk son who's an entitled jerk. And then for a few minutes, you start to think, maybe we've misunderstood him and he's being helpful and he rescues her and he's trying to help her. And then, oh no, he's totally a jerk. So you have like, there's so many twists in that one. But as far as a character running through, you have this character that's like, oh, we just despise, like everybody hates him and he's clearly a jerk. And then this idea of maybe he's helping, but you're not quite sure. And then in the end, totally.
And in the end, all in, right?
All in.
Yeah.
And
every time I see a donut now, I think of that.
Donut hole for the dono. I think Knives Out is a fabulous example because you have a plot twist in there that's like a character revelation type of plot twist, even though the movie's told through this kind of limited point of view, right? From the main character. I can't remember Ana de Armas's character's name, but like the very fact that somehow you become convinced of certain things and the main character becomes convinced of certain things about herself. Like, I mean, it's a masterclass on plot twists, I think, as far as character plot twists go.
Well, and you're sure you've solved it.
Oh yeah, but then you're like, wait a minute, there's a half hour left of this.
We know, half an hour in, it was a mistake.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Stanley. Then I'll make a point after.
I was curious about, what is it about what have they done to the jerk that makes us certain that he is not the bad guy?
Well, and I think it's his compassion, right? Like at a moment where you realize that it's all a mistake, so there really isn't another killer. He comes in and tries to help her navigate, and he literally like pulls up in his car and rescues her when she's running away from something. And you think, okay, people have misjudged him. He's not that bad, right? And there's not a killer. She is the killer because she made a mistake, and that's what really happened. But then it upends itself and in really fantastic ways.
And I'd also like to put in a comment about the meta discussion there a little bit, because I think that it's got the people who are also trying to analyze the genre, because it's never the jerk. It's never the jerk. It's never the jerk. It's always the very friendly maid or mentor figure or something. So these types of movies, it's never the jerk. And so when I was watching it, I was like, oh, it seems like it should be him because he's the jerk, but it's never the jerk.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't be him.
Right.
Yeah, and to build on that,
it's like I've seen every episode of Midsummer Murders, and it's never the jerk. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, one great thing that I think Knives Out, does well, and then we could talk about other examples. Like you brought up earlier, she's convinced as a character of an incorrect truth, which makes us as the viewers, or in the case of authors, the readers, believe that incorrect assumption too. So sometimes, to create a plot twist, authors, or sometimes you'll see it in movies, they'll try to withhold information from the viewer or the reader that the character knows, and makes a false sense of mystery or false sense of tension that often backfires, often ticks off your readers. My editor picks up on it every time I fall into that trap. And I'm like, no, don't do that. And you got to fix it. But you have to if you can make your character misinterpret something, then your readers misinterpret it, even though the truth is there right in front of you. And then when the truth finally comes out, everyone's like, wow, what a great plot twist. It's like, no, it's just a misunderstanding. But it was handled beautifully, because now you look back and you see, oh, those clues were there. We didn't pick up on it.
Grandma says ransom.
That's right.
Very beginning.
But we never believe it, because she's
an unreliable witness.
Yeah,
right?
she's an unreliable witness.
Yeah. And
A
just
great
pick
Yeah,
up-
but you make a super good
Yeah,
point.
Stanley, go ahead.
That the point being that even though you're withholding information, or your main character has misinterpreted that information, it has to be reasonably susceptible to that interpretation.
Correct.
Often we see things that are just, you pick it up and you say, yeah, that character's an idiot, because a simple conversation would solve this.
Mhm.
Right. And that kind of false tension, those, the lovers are quarreling, but if they would just say something that's all right, it really ticks me off personally, because it's a false tension, and sure, some people are that stupid, but we try, it's harder to root for someone who's really dumb like that. So we want characters who are smart enough to come up with good ideas that are wrong and convince us that, yes, that's the way we're going. They run down there and it's a dead end, or it's a twist, or they learn something new and they're like, crap, I've been running the wrong way. Because they'll drag your readers along with you. And it's totally believable.
Going back
I
to
just wanted
Harry
to follow
Potter.
up. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Allison.
I was going to say the first Harry Potter book, where you spend the entire book thinking that Snape is the bad guy, and it makes sense because he's creepy and mean, and he's sitting there muttering while Harry's sitting on a bucking broom. It totally makes sense, and that's why when the plot twist comes, we're like, oh,
Right.
wow.
Yeah.
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 Kenneth.
I just wanted to follow up on something Frank said a minute ago about, ticking readers off, and making sure you're not just trying to manipulate them. And I think you have to be so careful when you're writing about the limitations of the point of view you've chosen to write your book in. There was a series, Red Rising. I'm not sure if anybody's read it. Pierce Brown, really great series. I got into the third book of that and almost threw it across the room because I was so upset. It's written in first person present tense. And if you ask me, that is a very, very hard tense to write in and still keep secrets from your readers, because the characters is experiencing things real time and you're getting their real time assessments of stuff that they're learning, and so they give a window into their personal thoughts, and the idea that they're like thinking about something but they're not really thinking about it, it's just tough. It's a tough thing to do. And so there are some perspectives that you can write from that I think will make it much easier for you to hide certain things from your reader without just lying to them.
Yeah.
Right. And you can't lie to your readers, and you can't have your character, willfully miss important clues. But you want to provide information some way that's believable, that they're going to charge down. And then, like Allison, I think, said earlier, you get a new shot of information and it changes their worldview, and suddenly, Snape's not the bad guy or whatever, and everyone's just right there in the boat with you, and it's awesome. And the only caveat I think with that to be careful of is it's tricky to do a really good twist at the very end of a story, to throw the whole story onto its ear by saying, I've been lying to you this whole time, it's a dream sequence or something. There's a few examples that do that really well, like The Sixth Sense, but they set it up through the whole flick. But because if you do it wrong, you're going to tick off your readers and they will never read you again, and they will actively campaign against you because you lied to them. You know,
like
but if you do it right, awesome. You know,
like
but The Sixth Sense was brilliant.
That's like one of the most upsetting sentences that I can ever say to some of my students is we're talking about writing good endings and how they have to be satisfying. And I'm like, listen, if you ever want to make enemies, you know, the sentence could have been, and then Harry woke up in his cupboard, you know, like that was just like, people would kill you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just how could
they would have too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would. Sorry, I'm looking at some of the chat stuff, which is really interesting. People are having very big dialogue about how you get these clues in. And I think later we're going to talk a little bit more about how do we weave the clues in. But as you were talking about The Sixth Sense, it reminded me of The False Prince by Jennifer Nielsen. I don't know if everybody's read The False Prince. But she does a fantastic job of setting up the fact that they're going to put an imitator on the throne. And there are 3 characters involved in this adventure, and it's a middle grade fantasy, because one of the questions was, you know, what other genres, right? So we've talked about kind of suspense and mystery, and Sixth Sense isn't really a mystery. It's more of a suspense, I would say, right? A ghost story. And then there's this middle grade fantasy where the whole plot is putting an imposter in the throne. And you get to the very end and find out the lead imposter is actually the prince. Plot twist. If you haven't read it, it is well worth reading. She does an amazing job with all 3 books, but it is the biggest spoiler of the whole day. But the brilliance of it that I'm trying to share with you is because she has other books and other plot twists, but the whole time you're sure you know who he is.
Yep.
And he never once says he's not the prince. Not one time the whole book does he. Everybody else says, and he's trying to, and he's fitting in with these other imposters who are all vying for the spot and trying to help get him on the throne. And at the last ditch effort, he passed the test because he was the real thing. So
that's a great point. Another example that comes to mind for me, anyone who's read Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, excellent plot twists in there. And I love the fact that on the very first page of book 1, he reveals who the hero is at the end of book 3, and you totally don't get it. And through the whole series, he's telling you over and over and over who it is. And every single time you misinterpret it, thinking it's a different character, until the very end, when he flips it on you, and you just have that aha moment where all of those clues come into focus, and you're like, I'm such an idiot. That was so beautifully done. I hate him, but I love him too. Excellent example of some brilliant plot twists in that series.
Also, I'd say The Thief by Megan Whalen Turner. The plot twist at the end of that one is pretty great, and I'm actually not going to describe that one.
I think a good example of plot twists are in the movie Charade with
Katharine Hepburn.
What's her name?
Audrey
Hepburn and Cary Grant. Yeah. It just continues to twist you. I mean, we've probably now all seen it enough that there's no surprises, but the first time it's very surprising.
Yeah.
You know you've done it well when people are jealous that it's your first time reading the book or seeing the movie. Like, I really do. I get jealous when people are like, I haven't seen Knives Out. I'm like, oh, let's watch it.
Mm-hmm. Or you get to the end. I saw a comment on the chat. Somebody mentioned Inception, which is a movie I love because there's so many interesting intricacies to that movie. And the end ends up in a way where they've set it up so it could be a couple different possible endings. And that's kind of the hanging twist they never resolve. And it's, it works so well. I still argue with that with my kids. Like, well, maybe it was this or maybe it was that. And here's my reasons. And brilliantly done. Brilliantly done. I love the twist in that show.
So here's a question about that, though. If it wasn't Christopher Nolan, would you have still argued it the
He
same way,
easily-
or would it have been annoying?
It was a dangerous ploy, yes. And the caveat would be, if you screw it up, no one will ever want to read your stuff ever again, because you just screwed up something and left readers feeling unsatisfied, which don't do that. And that, the way they did it in Inception, left me satisfied but wanting more, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
But don't you kind of go into a Christopher Nolan film thinking there's going to be some meta ending? Like, it's an expectation of how he set it up. Kind of.
Yeah, it depends. And some people probably get ticked off by that, that hanging ending, and you're going to alienate some people when you do stuff like that. So you just have to be careful to do it beautifully, and you might pull it off. Otherwise, maybe don't do something quite that dangerous, especially your first time.
I mean, a really great case study if you are looking at Christopher Nolan, because you're right, it has kind of become his shtick, or at least it was for a while. And I think, now his shtick just seems to be like movies you have to watch 4 times to get. But I don't know if anyone else watched his most recent film, but The Prestige, if you have never had a chance to watch The Prestige and then read The Prestige by Christopher Priest.
I haven't read the book.
They almost feel like 2 completely different stories. Christopher Priest writes the whole thing kind of in journal format, old school 19th century style. And it's about, these magicians, and it's, loosely based the same story. But I would consider Christopher Priest's version of the story to be more based in fantasy than the film was. And Christopher Nolan just chooses to play up on these just shadow games that take place in your mind, and he's a great person to study, and because he understands plot and revealing things so well, to figure out how and where and why to hide certain clues in plain sight.
That was,
go ahead.
Amazing. I'm just saying that I love The Prestige. I think that it does plot twists so well. Because that's another one that tells you right at the beginning how they did it.
Yeah.
And you don't see it coming because they hide it so well.
Yeah. I want to talk for a minute because time is marching on as we talk about our favorite plot twists because they surprise us. I want to talk for a minute about when the reveal happens. How do we reveal the twist? And when should readers get it? Is it right when it happens? Is it right before it happens? Like, does it depend on the genre or the string? So when and how do you do a good reveal?
I think there's a few ways, and there's a few strategies. There's nothing quite like a reveal you figure out just late enough to be angry with yourself over. You know what I mean? I think Frank was kind of alluding to that, where it's like, I should have known, and I if you gave me 4 more pages, I would have got there or something. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I also have a deep appreciation, though, for basically leading readers to a conclusion early, and making it honestly like a very strong case that this is. I mean, there's nothing special. This is the answer, kind of like with Ransom and Knives Out, and then spending a large portion of a story convincing them that is not true, like you promised them it was. And there's something to be said for that. Like, I figured it out already. Oh, maybe I didn't figure it out. And then at the end, just being like, I did. No, come on, I did. Right? Like, yeah.
Yes, it's kind of like I think it resonates with us in life, right? We meet somebody, we might get a vibe, either they're, and then we try to overcome that and we try to get to know them, and then no, they're totally a jerk. And you come back around, right? We've all had those experiences where like, I knew I shouldn't trust, or I knew I shouldn't, and I think kind of looking at, that's why I asked about your life plot twists, because we read genres, we do all these things, and you can deconstruct everything. But the truth is, we want to be pleasantly surprised. We want to be a little horrified sometimes, but most of the time we want to be validated that we got it. We knew. Whether we knew in the beginning and we questioned ourselves, or whether we knew all along. We knew something was coming.
Right. And, also, I think it's it's pretty common to have some kind of a plot twist, at each of the stages, kind of the transitional stages in your story, which is important because usually you're introducing new information there, and that happens pretty common. And you're going to want to do that, take your story from the inciting incident, taken off one way, and then they realize, no, that's not really what's going on. They change directions, and then change directions, and then change again toward the finish. But in each of those arcs, those mini arcs within your story, you can twist it multiple times, which makes it a lot of fun as new information comes in, or characters reveal things. I don't know if we want to talk about how do you go ahead burying those clues so they come out, so you don't get ticked off or think, no, that was just something out of the blue that nobody could ever see coming, which could infuriate people. Or if it's set up properly, they say, oh. So there's a couple different ways to do it that can really kind of enhance the story experience.
Thanks. Allison, did you have something?
I was just thinking, this is a bit more for the section of if we talk about how to do these. But I was thinking that not all plot twists have to be accurate. And I'm thinking about Harry Potter. Again, this is the second Harry Potter book, when Harry thinks, he finds out that he thinks that Hagrid opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years before. And that's not true. That's not accurate, but it's a plot twist. It changes the perspective on the story. So maybe one way to hide your plot twists is to throw in a fake one. Or to throw in a non-accurate one. And maybe that's also just something that you could do midway through the story to change the reader's perspective, so that when the actual twist comes, the real reveal comes, that you set them on the wrong path, and now you're returning them to the right one. Kind of back to like what Kenny said about being validated right at the end, but maybe without that starting out point where you think that you know what's going on, and then you're doubting, and then you come back to it.
Yeah. Frank, but yes, that's a great point, Allison, too. And Frank, back to what you were saying about the different plot turns that happen and the arcs, the different story arcs. It brought up the question of the difference between a trigger, like at the end of a chapter that gets you going forward, versus a plot twist in somebody's arc. Because we want triggers throughout the story, right, that keep us going, and and they're a little bit different than a plot twist.
Absolutely. And if anyone else wants to jump in and talk about that, I worry that sometimes I take over the conversation. I don't want to do that, so feel free, jump in.
Any good examples of triggers versus plot twists? Or
triggers or hooks, maybe, is another word for it.
Triggers
to me, it seems like a plot twist is it comes more in the way you choose to follow up on a hook. Like you throw a hook in at the end of a chapter, and then you can either just deliver with a great conflict-packed scene, but it's not necessarily completely unexpected, or you can say, hello, we're going this way now. And I think, though, a hook, you need it in both cases at the end of a chapter. It's like, you got to turn this next page, please. I promise it'll be worthwhile. And then you can deliver in one of a few ways.
I would say that I think a hook will carry the story forward, and whether it carries it into a plot twist or not, that doesn't really matter. Where the plot twist changes the story. It changes the trajectory of where the characters are going. It changes maybe their plot arcs, their character arcs, whatever their goals are. Maybe it even changes those, and it might even change the way that the readers see everything that's led up to that. It's the way that the readers perceive the story. I think a plot twist could do that, where a hook won't necessarily do any of those things.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the plot twist is simply a whole change of tension. It doesn't have to change the whole worldview, but those are great ones when they do that. But all they really have to do is refocus the tension to some unexpected place in an unexpected way. It doesn't have to change the whole story, just a key part.
Sure. One example that just came to mind. Remember the story, the movie Tangled? Really funny, lighthearted kind of movie. But when they go into the tavern with all the criminals and everything, you think, uh-oh, what's going to happen here? And then they all start singing. It's kind of a fun, lighthearted sort of twist, but it took the story in an unexpected direction, and it gave the main character a chance to grow and show that she was more than this sheltered little weakling that needed someone to shepherd her along. She owned that scene. It was like, yes, awesome. So it's a little twist, but an important twist, done in a really fun way.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Do we want to dive into, Allison, a little bit more of how do we do it right versus how do we do it wrong? So if I'm writing a mystery, there's a lot of questions about how do I sprinkle clues? And we've talked about the need to do it, but how do we do it right? How do we set up the plot twist and deliver on the plot twist?
I like what you said earlier about hiding in plain sight, like the misunderstandings, putting in a clue and then attributing some other meaning to it, so that the readers say, "Oh, yes, this is a point that connects to storyline A," when in reality it's next to storyline B, or this is important for this reason because it's emotionally attached to the main character, when it turns out that it's actually a really important bit of evidence for whatever's going to happen later on.
Yeah, a lot of times you want to disguise important information along with something else. For example, someone might say something important, but it's during a really stressful battle scene or something, or a chase scene or something, and the reader's not going to pick up on it, right? Even though it's right there. And maybe it's said more than once. Or maybe you have a character with a really annoying habit of repeating something. You think, okay, that's just been put in as, you convince your readers that's just something we put in as an annoying habit of this person that suddenly becomes important and has been trying to give us clues all along, and we've ignored it because it's just annoying, or the piece of it, the clue that we really need is in this room with 20 other things, but even though we mention it, the characters focus on the wrong thing, and when you go back, you're like, there it was, and that's a classic example.
I think of the glasses of water and Signs, how important the glasses of water became at the end of Signs.
Oh, yeah.
I know, because I left glasses of water and my husband was like, they're just like you. They leave these glasses of water. I'm like, see, good thing I do.
There's a purpose.
There's a reason.
I like thinking about, almost everybody knows about Chekhov's gun, right? Where you have a gun in Act 1, it has to go off in Act 3. And one of the things that is, I think, a little known secret about the Chekhov's gun idea is that not everything is a gun. Mm-hmm. And it can get really overwhelming when you're writing a novel to treat everything like a gun, right? You are allowed to hide things and to include facts or details about characters that don't end up becoming huge plot twists or have huge explanations, right? Like someone can wear a blue hat just because they like to wear blue hats. And so I think that is a really important point. Now you have to, of course, draw the line at what is a gun and what's not a gun. And, the weirder it is, the more likely, if it sounds like a gun and quacks like a gun, then yes, but there are a lot of things, and then I kind of like what Frank just said. To me, I think hiding these clues, if you want a fun analogy, pretend like you're trying to sneak poison into somebody, and how you can. Maybe the poison tastes like a certain way, but there are lots of ways you can get this poison in that individual, and maybe it's putting it in another very strong tasting thing. Maybe you have snuck it in while they're asleep. Maybe there's lots of techniques, but the most important technique is to make sure it's not all the same technique, I think.
But the great twist would be to convince them that they had avoided the poison and drank something else that was really the poison.
Or they were immune to that poison because they've been building up a resistance for 20 years.
I was thinking that poison was in the chalice with the palace. But,
Coming from the brood.
but I really like that analogy about sneaking them poison, because just like real life, there are clues all over, and you don't know which clues are going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're putting in the important clues, you don't want to give them a drum beat and a big horn blast saying, here's a clue, it's going to be important.
Or
It's got to be delivered just like the rest of them.
Or you could, but for the wrong thing. I'm going back to the poison metaphor.
Yeah.
I before we went off on the court jester references, right? One way you see poison is give them something, say, "Oh my gosh, that was poison. Here, take the antidote." So in the plot twist, here's a big clue, and here's this little follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think where we've come to is there are
and I think
as sinister as you can be, that's the number of ways you can hide clues. And the more creative you can get about administering poison to someone, the more ways you'll have to hide clues in your book.
yes,
Another
the court
way-
gesture reference is blowing up the chat. Go, Danny.
Absolutely. And if anyone has not seen The Court Jester or hasn't seen it in a while, just go watch it. You'll thank
It's
us.
so good. It is so good.
And if anybody's dismayed that this has come to murder, remember that we're a bunch of writers, and there's more than one mystery and thriller writer on this panel.
Yes.
Please do not
I wanna
go
go
As
back
far
to
as you
Chekhov's
know, that's
gun.
all we are.
Yes. I want to go back to Chekhov's gun really quick, because I think there's, depending on the story you're telling, if you get to the end and the gun is a pop gun and out comes the little surprise tag, instead of actually being a point in the plot, that can be, depending on what you're telling, just you really want to avoid turning that important prop into a pop gun.
That's worse than not using
And I
it
think
at all.
Right?
That's true.
And it depends on the tone that you've set and the expectations you've set. Because if you set an expectation around this gun and then don't deliver, it leaves people feeling disappointed. If you don't, that's great. But if you set an expectation and then don't deliver, or deliver something significantly different that you haven't set up properly, your readers are going to feel betrayed. Not wow. They're going to be like, oh, you nerd. And they're going to throw books across the room or hold a little bonfire or something. You don't want them going there.
Yeah.
I've learned that if whatever you've got your readers thinking is the truth, you need to step it up to something cooler. Otherwise, they will be disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think my very favorite tool for making sure that you have your clues hidden correctly and you don't have any of those pop guns are alpha readers. Because
Yeah.
it's sometimes you just are too close to be able to tell, because and so you have to have people that you're going to be able to guinea pig. There's just simply no other way to find out.
Yeah, you'll be way too close to it. And for those of you in the chat, there was a poison reference that was Princess Bride. Just so you know.
Yeah.
When we talked about building up
powder,
that was Princess Bride.
But we had an immunity to it.
Yes.
That's right. We had an immunity to that.
Let's take some
I'm immune
questions.
to Princess Bride references.
Yes, I
Yeah,
want to
that's
make sure
good.
that we take a few questions. I don't know if you've been tracking all of them.
Yeah. So Linz asks, how do you plant clues without making them obvious at the time?
Yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about that. We put it in some action. Anybody else have another one we haven't talked about? Another way to hide clues?
Unreliable speaker. Like if you have if something weird's going on, you have a character that's considered kind of a goofball going, oh, it's aliens, it's aliens, it's aliens the whole time, and then lo and behold, at the end, it's aliens.
Right.
Yeah, I love it when the paranoid character is right or the conspiracy theorist is right.
I told you.
I told you all along. Okay, next question.
Treehugger asks, which point of view works better for misleading readers?
That's an excellent question.
I think you can use any point of view. And the trick is, if you're doing either a first person or a third person deep penetration, your reader should know everything your character knows. And that gets back to the point we made earlier, that you can't hide information from your reader that your character knows. So either they don't know, or they think they know, and they know the wrong thing. And then the twist or the reveal is when they learn the truth, which is hopefully not the last paragraph of the last page, generally, unless you've set that up really beautifully.
Yes, thank you. So, thanks. Anyone else on that?
I was just going to say,
Point of view?
Yeah, with the point of view, it almost becomes like a safety belt to make sure you're not cheating on point of view as well. Because like Frank said, your reader's going to know what the protagonist knows in those two points of view, and no more, right? Like, and as soon as you start hinting at more, you've already broken your point of view, which is a big no. But like, but it will also ruin your secrets. Ruin your secrets. There you go. Put that on my tombstone, please.
Yeah. I'm going to skip ahead to Laura's question. Do all stories need a plot twist of some sort?
I don't think so. I think they're nice.
I think it depends on how you define plot twist. You know, it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, but something that shifts the tension a little bit, at least a little bit, in an unexpected way.
That being said, like going back to what Allison brought up earlier with the meta, sometimes the best plot twist is no plot twist, you know, and then you have all the meta watchers who are just like, well, it's never the jerk, but it's just you did all the conflict. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to have, information coming in and helping your character to, develop and grow, kind of through their character arc. And a lot of those end up being what we would call a plot twist. If they're not changing the arc dramatically, if that's your story, that's fine. It doesn't have to be a big plot twist, but it has to be significant for the character. And sometimes significant things are small.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about, we're telling stories. There's a lot of different reasons to tell stories, but if you look at your life, I'm certainly glad my life has been full of plot twists, because even when I thought I was on a good plan, a lot of times the plot twist put me on a better path, or, I learned or grew something. So I think it's that change in your character. It's hard to do change without some kind of surprise, because they go together really well.
Yeah.
Okay. There are a lot of questions, but I think we have 2 minutes left. I'm going to ask Kylie's question because I think it's interesting. How would you write an unreliable narrator in first person or close third person?
Oh.
Because somebody challenged in the chat. Write an unreliable
actually, I've got a great example for you. Go check out Susanna Clark's new book, Piranesi. Which, if you haven't read it yet, it's the whole, like, the thing's written in journal entry form, but it's first person, and it might be kind of what you're after. That's all I'll say.
I was going to suggest the Telltale Heart, Edgar Allan Poe. But I think that if there's some reason to believe that the narrator is not exactly clued into 100% reality, I think that's what you end up doing. So does this person have a misconception from the start? Do they really, 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 really love or care about somebody, and you as the reader are watching this person that they really care about, I don't know, torture kittens or something, and that person's the bad guy, but they just can't see it. That signals unreliability. And that's a really dramatic example, but something that would just signal to the readers that this person's worldview is not correct.
It could be something as simple as they simply lie to themselves just about one thing. Just a very narrow band of things where they are not reliable on, but everything else is pretty good.
Kenny, could you repeat the book?
It's called Piranesi. Yeah. Piranesi. Yeah. By Susanna Clark.
Thank you. So I'll also put it in the chat. Anything else on unreliable, Frank?
I think we covered it pretty well.
Okay.
Unreliable Frank. Is that your new nickname?
I did. It must be the end of the day. It must be the end of the day. We're all getting fussy. Okay. Thank you, everyone. This is going to conclude our panel. I'm going to give 30 seconds if anybody has any final notes of advice for writers, and then we'll call it good. But anybody final words?
I saw there was one question about where to find books on plot twists. I don't have one off the top of my head, but I know if you get online and do some searches, you can find some good information pretty fast. So do some research and reach out to one of us if you have questions. I know I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm sure the rest of you are too.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.